Story 1, Pet Cemetery. The character with the intellect was very upsetting for me. Strangely, I didn't have a problem with most of the rest of it. Story 2, The Exorcist. I saw it in 4th grade. A few years later, I fell asleep watching the History Channel. At around 2 a.m., a documentary on the filming of The Exorcist came on. I had a dream about the movie because of it. In the dream, I was in the room with her strapped to the bed. When I woke up, I looked at the TV and saw her face, which scared me immensely. Story 3, Jurassic Park. I couldn't make it past the opening scene. It's funny because it has since become one of my favorite movies. Story 4, I accidentally saw Ghost Ship. I was also terrified of the Red Bull in The Last Unicorn and of cows in real life. Story 5, The Day After Tomorrow affected me deeply, and I didn't want to explain why, so I watched the entire thing during family movie night. It traumatized me because it made me think about what I would have to do as an adult in a life-threatening situation when my loved ones are in a different area. It impacted me greatly. I never want to talk about it, see it, or think about it again. Story 6, The movies The Fly, 1958, and The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957, had spider scenes that scared me so much as a child that I ran out of the television room screaming and crying. Story 7, That tunnel scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is far scarier than anything in Jurassic Park. We had wanted to watch Jurassic Park, but my aunt said no because it was too scary. I have seen both films. Story 8, Snow White in a forest scene with animal eyes in the trees. What were they thinking? Also, Watership Down. Story 9, The Plague Dogs and Watership Down animated movies both traumatized me equally and are based on books written by Richard Adams. I am still not over it, but The Plague Dogs turned me into an animal welfare advocate at 7 years old, and I am still going strong with it to this day. Story 10, Wizard of Oz. That scene with the crystal ball, Auntie M, and the Wicked which made me run behind the couch. Of course, guess who appeared on Sesame Street? Story 11. There was a movie where a family had an adopted child and a biological child. At one point, there is a scene where both kids are dangling from a cliff, and the father can only save one. He saves the adopted child. I don't remember much about this movie, but I thought about it a lot at a young age. I'm not sure why, as I don't have siblings, but I guess it was kind of a moral dilemma that fascinated me. Story 12. I don't know about being traumatized, but Event Horizon was quite a movie to show to a 7-year-old who was forbidden to watch Austin Powers. Story 13, Jaws. That terrifying head popping out when Hooper was checking the boat hull. I was only 7. It gave me nightmares for weeks. I wouldn't stretch my legs out in bed because I kept imagining that my feet would touch the head under the covers at the end of my bed. Story 14. I was 5 years old when my mom put on An American Werewolf in London. It was fine until the mutant nightmare scene where they raided the house. I was terrified for years. The monster's face still affects me. Honestly, they did a great job with the effects, makeup, and costumes for 1981. Story 15. Close Encounters. The part when the child gets abducted. The entire movie, really. Something about those aliens at the end really disturbed me, even if they were meant to be friendly. Story 16. Carrie. Both the scene after she comes home from the prom and the very end when her hand emerges from the grave. Story 17. I accidentally caught part of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie on television when I was a toddler. Freddy Krueger was the epitome of terror for me for years after that. Story 18, Alien. My dad took me to a little country theater that felt dark and gloomy when I was 10 or 11. We rarely went to the movies, so I was excited. Driving back home through the woods, I was sure we were in danger. For some reason, I also really liked Sigourney Weaver. Story 19. The Toy Story franchise has made me refuse to watch the movies because it instilled in me the belief that toys and objects have feelings. I feel so sad when Jessie gets left on the curb. I'm literally tearing up just thinking about it. I dislike Toy Story. Story 20. Definitely Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I remember watching it because the age rating was 6 years old. I stopped watching it when the monsters started eating eyeballs. It still traumatizes me to this day. Story 21. Poltergeist and Salem's Lot. I just knew there was a vampire living in our guest room closet. My mom kept our dress-up clothes and shoes in that closet. She would tell me to go get something out of it, and it was always a firm no. Story 22. My mom found Watership Down on video. She saw cute rabbits and thought it would be a good movie to keep us kids busy while she talked to her sisters. They returned to the room to find me and all my cousins traumatized, with tears in our eyes. Story 23. The Original Invaders from Mars. I saw it on a hot Ontario summer afternoon when I was 4 on a 14-inch black and white television in the mid-1960s. It scared me, but it also introduced me to the genre of film, television, and books that I have enjoyed the most in my life. Story 24. My stepdad showed me Reservoir Dogs when I was about 13. I couldn't believe Mr. Blonde cut off that cop's ear and then talked to it. What a disturbing scene. I thought it was shocking. Story 25. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I could not sleep alone for 3 months after I saw it. My mom slept with me every night. Story 26. I'm probably older than everyone, but Hitchcock's The Birds terrified me. I still wonder what they are up to when I see a group of crows in my front yard. Story 27. Sleeping Beauty. Seeing Maleficent turn into a dragon scared me. I became convinced that witches were real and would kidnap me and lock me away. It was a nightmare that haunted me for years. Story 28. The Wizard of Oz. I still have never watched it fully. It was the flying monkeys. That was traumatic. Story 29. Animals of Farthing Wood. It is a television series, but I somehow remember it as a movie. It is the most traumatizing children's show ever. Even for an adult, it is exceedingly morbid. Story 30. The Elephant Man only saw the preview while excited to watch Star Wars in the theater. Who would have thought that The Elephant Man would be great for an audience of children? Story 31. Outbreak. I saw it when I was around 9 or 10 and was left absolutely terrified. The scene that scared me the most is near the beginning when they visit a village in Zaire. One of the characters enters a hut and finds a baby boy crying over the bloody bodies of his parents. Story 32. Titanic, when he is trapped and the ship is filling with water. Artificial intelligence, when they abandon the robot boy in the woods. Extraterrestrial, when they find him in the river, pale and sickly. Signs, the home video footage of the alien walking by from the child's birthday party. Story 33. Jaws. I never made it past the dun. I ran out of the room and hid. I finally saw the rest of the movie when I was around 10 and loved it. Story 34. Faces of Death. I only watched 2 scenes before having to turn it off. I guess because it was supposedly real deaths. I know now they say a lot of it was fake. I'm not sure how much, but as a young child, it terrified me. Story 35. The Blob. That thing could get through your air conditioning vents. I was scarred throughout my entire childhood. I can't rewatch it because I know it's going to be so campy, and I prefer the manic dread in my mind. Story 36. Monster House is the earliest film I can remember having a profound effect on me, but Coraline is the one that still creeps me out a bit now. That film is not a kid's movie. You won't convince me otherwise. Story 37. Little Monsters features a scene with a monster wearing the skin of a child, and it still haunts me to this day. Story 38. The People Under the Stairs is a movie about a doctor who murdered his patients and hid them in the walls. I'm not sure why I was watching any of these at 5 years old. Story 39. Bambi's mother was shot and killed by hunters. At one point, he was running terrified through a forest fire. I had nightmares for months. I was only 6 years old. Story 40. American History X. The curb stomp scene was brutal, despite having more gruesome moments in the movie. Story 41. The commercials for A Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser were unforgettable. I didn't actually see either movie until I was in my 30s. I can't believe I was so convinced they were scary films. Story 42. How has no one mentioned The Land Before Time yet? Between the earthquake, the T-Rex, and the mother brontosaurus dying a tragic death, that movie really affected me. Story 43. The shining bathtub scene. I didn't even know why I was so terrified of bathtubs until it was put on again. When that scene started, it felt like a revelation. I know that bathroom. It has haunted me for years. Story 44. My aunt brought my cousin and me, both 8 at the time, to see The Sixth Sense. I'm not sure what she was thinking or if she even realized what we were going to watch. It's one of my earliest and clearest memories, and we ended up running out and into the theater playing Stuart Little. I wasn't able to watch The Sixth Sense again until I was in my 20s. Story 45. Final Destination. I was terrified of theme parks and unnecessary activities. I still have the tendency to think, what if this happens? And usually avoid it or find a way around it. Story 46. The Transformers, the movie. Optimus Prime dies. He was a father figure to many of us growing up. We cried at the screen. Story 47. The Dark Crystal. When the Skeksis died and turned into dust, it deeply affected me as a 4-year-old. I literally couldn't rewatch it until I was 32 because it traumatized me that much. Story 48. Bridge to Terabithia. Especially since I was completely the 12-year-old who would go spend time in the woods and explore some areas that others would definitely consider dangerous, but I never thought of it that way. Story 49. Harry Potter. At the end, when Voldemort emerged from the back of the teacher's face and screamed, it freaked me out and gave me countless nightmares. Story 50. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The scene where the child falls into the candy moat and is sucked up the pipe stuck with me. Story 51. River's Edge. I was 9 years old, and it haunted my mind for weeks that summer. Honorable mention. The Who's Tommy the Musical. The part with Anne Margaret rolling around in baked beans with her son Tommy was just wrong. Extra credit, out of the blue. My mother said Dennis Hopper directed this, and I replied, yeah, my braces hurt. Let's go. I really don't understand why that movie has 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. Story 52. Jaws was 9 in 1975 when it came out. I convinced my parents to take me. I am still uncomfortable swimming in the ocean to this day. Story 53. The Omen and Poltergeist. My father was a filmmaker who made horror films, so my parents thought this was normal. Story 54. Boys Don't Cry. My library rented movies to kids of any age. I was too young to watch the violence in that film. Story 55. Dante's Peak. Why was it ever a good idea to let a child under 10 watch this? I have a horrific and irrational fear of volcanoes to this day. Story 56. A Nightmare on Elm Street. I watched the original when I was 4. At the time, I was terrified, but it quickly became my favorite horror movie and still is, even 40 years later. Story 57. Old Yeller. I could not have been more than 5 or 6 years old, and I knew even then it was going to traumatize me for life. Story 58. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I sneaked into the living room when I was about 6 and watched it from behind the couch, having recurring nightmares for years. However, I taught myself to lucid dream during that time before I realized it was lucid dreaming. Story 59. Willy Wonka still can't hear the Oompa Loompa song without feeling violently anxious and ill. Those poor children. Story 60. Jaws. To this day, I don't like being in water where I can't see around me. When I was a child, I didn't like entering a deep, muddy puddle in my boots because I couldn't see beneath the surface. Story 61. My dad showed me The Grudge when I was 8 years old. I looked behind doors whenever I entered a room until I was 14. Story 62. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The alien at the end with its spindly arms outstretched really freaked me out. Story 63. E.T. Scared me deeply. You can't tell me that character didn't step out of a horror movie. There is nothing cute or cuddly about his design. The leathery skin, non-existent legs, long skeletal arms, telescoping neck, and glowing heart are all unsettling, especially when he gets sick and appears moaning and lifeless. Story 64. Nightmare on Elm Street. I was 6 years old. I didn't sleep normally until I was in high school. Then I watched Darkness Falls, and I am finally able to sleep normally at 34. Story 65, The Wizard of Oz. It was terrifying. Birds, flowers, motorcycles, roller coasters, toilets, and trash cans were all deadly. But Diana Ross and Michael Jackson were impressive. Story 66, The Exorcist. I was 8 years old and asleep on the couch. I woke up to my mom watching it while crocheting something. She didn't know I was awake, but I'm not sure if she would have thought about the appropriateness of the film, being a typical member of her generation. I couldn't sleep with the light off or go down into the basement for months. Story 67, Nightmare on Elm Street. I swore there was something coming through the wall with every shadow of every branch that moved in the moonlight across it. I was too young to watch it, but my parents didn't know I had. Story 68. It was one of the only discs we had at the house, so it was our after-dinner entertainment every night. Mesmerizing. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.